What's up, everybody? Welcome back to UFC Roundup. We're going to discuss UFC 283 that happened this weekend. As you can see, me and Michael Chiesa are not in person this time.
Fun so good while it lasted. It was amazing.
There's no breakfast sandwiches on tap today. I've got an empty can of soda. That's about all I have to offer the audience. But we did have a huge 15-fight pay-per-view 283 in Rio de Janeiro. Sorry, John kept getting on me this weekend. De Janeiro. I was a little worried. Long trip to Brazil. Haven't been back there in years. I had a great time, man. I was on the beach every day. I was running along the beach. I was swimming in the ocean. The sun was shining. The people were great. The food was great. The beef there is delicious. And the fights delivered. And let's get right into it. Let's talk the main event. We have a new UFC light heavyweight champion, Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill. I got to hang out with him and the team a lot leading up to that fight. I got to see him and Glover, kind of how they're handling the week, Michael. Both guys were extremely confident going into that fight, and it showed. They both delivered. Let me just say, Glover Teixeira is probably one of the toughest human beings I've ever seen perform inside of that octagon, and thank him for everything that he has ever done. He retired that night, and Jamal Hill just was on point. You could tell he knew he had the power, and I think what surprised everybody was the fact that he had the grappling to get back out of those bad positions, which Glover was able to put him in. Did that surprise you all? When the fight hit the ground, particularly in the fifth round, when it looked like the fight was almost over, it looked like Jamal Hill was going to put Glover away. Glover did what he does best, fought through it, toughed it out, got the fight to the mat, got mount for a second. Jamal Hill reversed, came back out, got up to a single leg and got out of there.
Yeah, it's crazy that Jamal was able to get out of that position because I thought we were seeing another round 5 Hail Mary play out before our eyes, much like Usman versus Leon Edwards. But yeah, that was what impressed me the most about Jamal Hill is how not only how he was able to defend the takedowns, but it was the get-ups off bottom. I thought when Glover had him down in round 5, if he didn't pass, I thought he would have a better chance because Jamal showed in this fight he understands how to essentially use his body to take away Glover's base and use that to get up on his feet. And once Glover took mount, he was able to kind of sneak out of there, get back to his feet. And the biggest thing that impressed me with Jamal Hill was there's a lot of pressure that comes with fighting in a title fight. I can't imagine. I've never been there, but obviously I had a close friend of mine, Juliana Pena, who's been in those title fights. And she talks a lot about what comes with it, the media obligations, the pressure. And for Jamal, you add the fact that he's going into enemy territory. He's going into Brazil to fight one of their most favorite champions, Glover Teixeira. He took it all in and he took it in stride. In the way he fought and the improvements he showed, I mean, there is so much you can do with this guy. I will admit there's been a few times where Jamal's had some matchups where I have doubted him, and it's not because of skills. It's just because of how young he is in the game, and he has jumped up into tougher competition early on. I mean, this was his, 8th or 9th UFC fight, and he's already fighting for a title. That's crazy. You know, the only guys we see do that are people like Alex Pereira, who's someone I'm going to touch on next. But just to see the improvements he's made in such a short amount of time, I'm a believer now. There's not a man at light heavyweight that I don't think Jamal Hill can't beat. I think that he can beat anybody at 205 pounds. And I'm excited to see what's next for him. There's so many things you can do with this guy. There's a lot of storylines. You could, obviously, Yuri Prohaska is waiting in the wings. You got guys like Ankalaev, Jan Blachowicz, Anthony Smith. There's a storyline there, Paul. I mean, there's so much you can do with our new light heavyweight champion.
Yeah, there is a lot, man. And, Jamal Hill is a guy who, like you said, still pretty young in his UFC career. First Contender Series alum to go and win a UFC championship belt too. So shout out to everybody that's worked on the Contender Series that, one of our guys got it and made it. It's pretty awesome to see it finally happen. And I think some credit's got to be given to Jamal for being a loyal student of the small gym in Michigan that he's from. I got to hang out with these guys and see how dedicated they are to him. And there's something to be said about that. That takes guts, right? To not win a few fights and then be like, I got to go do this, or I got to go and go find a mega gym and have more training partners. So I think that was cool to see. And you saw the emotion. You saw how important that was. You saw him get on his knees and present the belt to his coaches. And, there was that week was not without some drama for Jamal Hill and things like that. And he worked through it all. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen next. And I think the next best bet for him and for the fans is Yuri Prohaska if he's going to be healthy.
Oh yeah,
timeline worked out, and we have
on.
He's opening up as a favorite, Jamal Hill. I think that's because of that performance that he just put on against somebody like Glover Teixeira, who almost won that fight with Yuri Prohaska and then slipped up in the 5th round with like 40 seconds left to go. So we'll see how that pans out. But it was just an amazing weekend to see that all happen in front of me, to see a young man work his butt off with a small team behind him. And like you said, there's lots of storylines that work out for him. So he could hold that belt for a while. There's the guys right at the tippy top are guys that I think he definitely matches up very well against.
Yeah, and this is when I said I'm going to touch on Alex Pereira, but before I dive into him,
yeah, you saw them staring at each other.
Yeah, I saw them definitely staring at each other. But this is the first fight to make, given that Yuri Prohaska, he vacated the title because of the shoulder injury, which is the right thing to do. I mean, he's got a long recovery ahead of him. Why logjam the division? And plus, that makes for an even bigger fight when he heals up and gets back in there. And that gives us enough time to have Alex Pereira potentially fight Israel Adesanya for the 4th time. I mean, I know this is they had their 2 kickboxing matches, 2 UFC fights. So it's a quadrilogy, a tetralogy, whatever you want to call it. Whatever you want to call it, the 4th fight. Or if there's someone else that want to put Pereira in with next. Either way, it gives him time to defend his title. And if he wins and if Jamal wins, there is no better fight, especially if Jamal Hill beats Yuri Prohaska and he avenges that loss of Glover's. Pereira is going to want to jump in there and right his wrong. And what a storyline that would be. I mean, that's one of the favorite. That's for mixed martial arts fans. We get the best of the best. We always get to see the best guys fight the best guys. That's the beauty in this sport. But when you can add a big storyline to it, when it works out that way, when the MMA gods bless us with those types of things, it makes those fights very special. So I could see, hopefully, if the MMA gods deliver, let's see Jamal defend his title and win. Let's see Pereira defend his title and win. And let's see the end of the year, 2023, last pay-per-view, Pereira versus Jamal Hill. I called it, Paul, right here on UFC Roundup.
You heard it here. You heard it here. I mean, the writing is on the wall. There's no doubt about it. The way that all worked out in the cage, the way Glover was talking about Alex in the cage and how he's going to focus on him, and Jamal Hill, the young new champion, is there. They got to meet each other and shake hands. And obviously, you see the size of Alex Pereira. So he's a massive human being.
He's so big.
Easily fight 205.
Dude.
Yeah. And speaking
what
of
a fight
Glover,
that would be, though, Paul. I mean, just even the storyline's great, but the fight, like, dude, you want to talk about like pure kickboxing versus like MMA striking. Like, I feel like Jamal is a phenomenal MMA striker. You look at his base, his legs, wide stance, power in both hands, somewhat unconventional techniques that actually fit into, the MMA repertoire of skills you need to have success. And then you got Pereira, 2-time glory kickboxing champion with that Brazilian style of kickboxing. I mean, it would be tremendous.
And I think that even Jamal Hill's striking, Muay Thai striking for MMA is a bit even underrated. I mean, the left kick, the way he worked that on the fly, apparently that was somewhat part of the game plan to help him kind of switch into his southpaw stance, to put something out there to kind of distract Glover, like a big kick. I think it ended up working out even better than he anticipated, but he landed some good knees too in the clinch that split open Glover's eyebrows. And we got to talk Glover too, because I mean, he was just a dog that entire fight, and he hung it up. He decided that on that fight, to fight there in his home of Brazil. He has won the belt at, I think, 42 when he won the belt. Had this fight at 43, still looked like he's got it. But I think his family, I think Glover and his coaches just don't want to see him go through those kind of fights anymore at 43 years old. That's a lot of punishment to take. And when we talk about Glover's legacy, for me, man, I will just always think of him as that guy that never quit, that never got bogged down by losses and disappointments. Anytime he lost one or two, he always came back stronger. And to every young fighter out there, if you're going to have somebody as a role model and look to somebody, please, for God's sake, look at that man, because as he got older, he learned how to adapt his style to that, to take care of himself, to take care of his body more. And he still was able to go out there and perform with the young guys and look better than ever. So I'll think of him as just a guy that really showed the world what toughness can do, what determination and hard work. I mean, he's not the most naturally just unbelievably gifted human being in the world. He just works his ass off, and he became champion of the world because of it.
Yeah, he's extremely resilient. I mean, you talk a lot about the crazy fights that he's been in, but like this is a guy, it took so long for him to even get to the United States because of the visa issues. It took a lot of resiliency for him to stay the course and not give up on his dreams, because he didn't get into the UFC until he was like what we perceived to be his prime, which obviously his prime ended up being a lot more extended than the average fighter. But I mean, he didn't get to the UFC till he was 32, 33 years old, Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, put that in perspective for you guys. I was 24. You got guys like Raul Rosas who are 18, 19 years old. Imagine not getting to the big show until you're 32 years old and you end up fighting for the title 4 times. I mean, and Paul, you were there Octagon side, you know, and it was, you know, I'm in the ESPN studio, so we're all kind of talking, and John Hackleman really told him to put the towel down in round 5. Like, did he not say, I guess somebody had said, like, he just told Hackleman to not throw the towel in so he could go out and fight round 5. Did that really happen?
Yeah, Hackleman. I mean,
wow.
We could see him because he wasn't in the chief spot, right? He's there still as just kind of a support and somebody that's been with Glover for so long. Glover has to have him there. Like, they have such a bond with each other. But he took a back seat and he just kept saying, can we stop this? Like, you know, should we, like, he wanted to maybe end the fight going into the 5th round. And man, yeah, you just saw Glover was just not having it. He wanted to go out there and finish that damn fight, but it was considered. It was something that was discussed. And I think it could have been, but in hindsight, yeah, you know, I'm glad that he got to finish that fight, go out like a G. And I'm glad that, well, I think, you know, a lot of us are worried that even if he doesn't win that fight, that he's not going to retire and that there's more of these to come. But he must have known, listen, just let me get through this one. This is it. You know what I mean? Let me try one more time. I think even if he goes out there in that 5th and he wins that belt and submits Jamal, I think he still puts those gloves in the center of the cage and walks out there after that moment.
Well, I think that if he beat Jamal Hill like he beat Jan Blachowicz, we'd see him fight again. I think if he could get, you know, pretty effortless takedowns and get a smooth submission and not take any damage, I think we'd see him fight again. But I think just maybe there was discussions with this team like, hey, if this guy takes me in the trenches, or, you know, if I get finished, you know, because Glover seems to be a guy that's pretty grounded. You know, you can tell that he's not he's a realist with his situation, with his age, where he's at. Always positive, but I'm sure he's very honest with himself. But yeah, I think that he just knew that if this is going to be a tough fight, then this is the last fight. Even if he won, you know, I think that they would, his family, his team would be like, yeah. I mean, if you fans haven't seen the picture of him after the fight, I mean, he had to have had at least probably 30 stitches in his face at the bare minimum.
Man, dude.
But the cut, I don't remember which one it was over, but it was split multiple directions, hanging in his eye. Like, he probably broke his nose. Like, he's
for sure broke his nose. So did Jamal Hill. Hill.
And that's cool for you that you got to hang around with those guys and kind of see, you know, what it was like for Jamal headed into these moments. And you know, one's on his way up and it's going to do great things, and one leaves us with some great memories, some great fights.
Yeah.
Glover Teixeira, a tremendous champion. Enjoy your retirement. Or I did it wrong. I put my thumb up. It's this and this. The pit.
There you go.
I used to do that when I was an amateur and I wasn't even part of the team. I was just such a Liddell fan. I'd be like, yeah, the pit. Woohoo!
Oh man, throwing it back, dude. And that's just I'm glad Glover got to have one more battle, get another bonus on your way out. Focus
real
on
life Rocky story, dude. We saw it right before our eyes. That last fight was like Rocky 1. Just like he just wanted to go the distance one more time, dude. What a guy.
Yeah, and it was an honor to see him and call that fight. And we'll talk about another legend in a little bit, but I think we got to get to the co-main event, which was a tetralogy is over. The tetralogy is over. I just think Brandon Moreno is one of those guys that just started to really. There we go.
Moreno, let's go, Brandon Moreno. What a stud!
You are not the Brazilian crowd, because if so, I'd be throwing beers at you right now. is what was happening.
Let's go.
And Glover was not happy about that, and that's why he made sure that the crowd was not going to be throwing beers at Jamal Hill on the way out. But listen, a great fight while it lasted, not without its controversy, obviously, but that was a clean punch. For anybody that maybe didn't see that for some reason and you're watching this, a knuckle, the thumb knuckle Let me see. I'm gonna went into the eye of Deiveson Figueiredo, but that's legal. It was a closed fist, and then there was a swipe that looked like maybe that had gotten in the eyes. It didn't, and the judges officially had it 2-1. People were getting on me in DC because we thought maybe it was 3-0. And listen, I don't know. I haven't rewatched it, but you guys got to realize we're calling 15 freaking fights. Okay. We're doing.
And it was late at night too, wasn't it?
It's the main card started at midnight in Rio.
Yeah.
15 fights. So we're, you know what I mean? Like one round maybe gets away where we didn't score properly. Like, come on, kiss my ass for all you guys that are giving us crap about that. It's a lot of calling fights. It's a lot to keep in your head and still talk for 8 hours, 7 hours, whatever it is throughout the night. Either way, I thought Moreno just had the number that night. And he talked a lot about his wrestling and using the grappling leading into that fight. And he did exactly that. He would use his boxing, close that distance. Figueiredo had the guillotine attempts, but it never seemed all that close. Moreno was able to work his way out, and the end of an era here in flyweight, and maybe the end of Deiveson Figueiredo's career at flyweight. Says he can't do this weight cut anymore, and I'm kind of happy to hear that. He is a man who cuts a lot of weight, and you can tell even when he does it right, it's something that definitely takes an effect. It's a lot to do that. You know how it was when you fought it.
His body looks like a roadmap. It's just covered in veins. He looks like Kevin Randleman's thigh. Like, rest in peace to the legend. Yeah. Like, his body is just veined out everywhere. Yeah, it was a clean shot. And for the people that get on your guys' case, yeah, you try sitting octagon side, calling 13 fights, headed into a co-main event, and trying to keep an accurate score while they're trying to narrate the fights for you fans at home. Like, you should be ashamed of yourself. But yeah, Moreno, man, there's something about his style when he matches up with Deiveson Figueiredo where the wrestling plays in so well, because Moreno's such a volume guy. For every 3, you'll get one of Davidson's 1. And that one punch or that one strike is always going to be something big. So if you can get your opponent to miss with a big strike, it just opens up such a good opportunity for those wrestling entries. And Moreno really capitalized. That really kind of embodies that kind of game plan. And then the left hook, I mean, it was on point the whole fight, as long as the fight lasted. Like, the left hook kept landing, clean shot. I mean, it's almost like it's how you want to land a hook. Like, if you can punch and land without your gloves, with your knuckles, like if you can knuckle a guy with a hook, kind of like what Nate Diaz does, or the same way Moreno did with that thumb knuckle, it's something a lot of guys like to do. And I think it's effective. It really gives guys bad swelling around the eyes. And either way, it's good to see this thing be laid to rest. Could we see it maybe at 135 pounds? I wouldn't be surprised if these guys clashing. And these guys are just destined to fight. The fights are always exciting. But either way, I'm glad we get a move on. It's been 3 years, aside from the Kai Kara-France fight, it's been 3 years of these 4 fights between these two gentlemen. And they've been a ton of fun. I've enjoyed watching all of them. But I'm ready to see some of this new blood at flyweight get a shot at fight for the title.
Yeah, and I think it's good. It's good for Figueiredo too if he moves up, because it's a fresh start. It's new guys, and I just feel like it's one of those cases where Figueiredo might be able to beat almost every guy in that flyweight division, just not consistently beat Brandon Moreno. It's just that one guy. It's the styles make fights interesting, and for some reason, the way that they match up, it just seems like there's the slightest edge in favor of Moreno. Other than obviously Figueiredo had his win. But even that one, a lot of people would argue that possibly you could give that fight to Brandon Moreno. And for Moreno, when we talk what's next, I think it's pretty obvious, and it was pretty clear that night that Pantoja is the one that wants this fight. Moreno just wishes he would have given him a little bit of time to celebrate. Right. Apparently, it started very genuine and kind, and then he's like, "All right, when do you want to fight? Like how? So I want to fight in a month." And listen, I'm glad that Pantoja wants that fight. I think we all want that fight for him as well. But the champion and the UFC decide when the champion's going to be fighting next. You don't come in and tell the champion who just won, this is when we're fighting. I'd tell you to go my ass. You know what I mean? Get the hell out of here.
We can't say the F word and the S word on YouTube.
I'll go drink a case of beer first, then I'll decide when I want to fight you. So get back in line, son.
Yeah, poor Moreno. I mean, first you have the Kai Kara-France fight where Davidson is like already up in the octagon, like, you and me were fighting in Brazil, like ASAP. Like, and then you get Pantoja, like these guys. Maybe it's because Moreno has such a nice demeanor, like obviously he's a ferocious fighter. He really flips the switch when he makes that walk. I would not guess that this guy has his hobby is building Legos. I would think his hobby is like building coffins. He flips a crazy switch from being this happy-go-lucky guy to just a stone cold killer. So maybe that's why guys approach him after his fights. But either way, yeah, I think Pantoja is the guy. And the unfortunate thing is this is another trilogy fight. This is another fight that's kind of old news for Moreno, but he's 0-2 against Pantoja. So obviously, as a competitor, as a champion, he wants to get one of those fights back from Pantoja. So I think that's the logical guy. And there's other guys making their way up. I think Manal Kopp wins another fight. He could be fighting whoever wins.
That's fresh blood, man. Yeah.
And that's a fun guy to watch fight, man. So a lot of exciting things at flyweight. It's just unfortunate for Moreno. It's another trilogy, but it'll be fun for him because he's motivated to get one of those fights back from Pantoja.
Yeah, exactly. That it's different. Whereas the fights with Figueiredo were so close, and there was some controversy, a draw, and all this stuff. So it's like, oh my god, and these are long fights that they're going through. Whereas at least with Pantoja, talking back in the Ultimate Fighter, you're talking a unanimous decisions a while ago, and he lost them. So he's a different beast nowadays. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be interesting because Pantoja wants it because he knows he's had his number before. You're not fighting that same guy by any shape of the imagination. But flyweight still on fire. Lots of contenders on the way up that still need to build to that. So I think Pantoja next. Give Moreno some time. And other storylines and things that were fun, obviously, in this pay-per-view. Listen, Gilbert Burns called his shot, said that he was going to go out there, he was going to use his wrestling, and he was going to use his jiu-jitsu. And damn, he did just that. I think you said it was hot knife through butter earlier.
For sure. I mean, for Gilbert Burns, like you said in the fighter meetings, to come in and say, yeah, I've been working on my wrestling, I'm just going to take this guy down and sub him. It's like, that's pretty confident. That's a bold statement. It's Neil Magny. It took me 5 rounds. Yeah. It took me 5 rounds to beat him. And granted, it was a lopsided beating. It still took me 5 rounds. But for him to go in there, take him down, cut through his guard like a hot knife through butter. I mean, the misdirection passes, the head and arm choke, you just know when Gilbert Burns latches onto your neck, when he latches onto an arm, he's got a tremendous squeeze, a tremendous grip. And this is a guy where I feel like a lot of fighters have forgotten what the beating heart of Gilbert Burns is jiu-jitsu. Like that is how that's what made Gilbert Burns. Like he's a multiple-time world champion in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, gi and no gi, got third at ADCC, I believe, in 2017. I mean, you're just talking about a guy that is a ferocious grappler, and he's just, fans know him as this guy with these hands. He's one of the more, I would say he's one of the more prolific knockout guys at 170 pounds. You see what he did to Damian Maia. He dropped the former champion, Kamaru Usman. But for him to go back to his roots and just do it with ease, it was very, very impressive.
Yeah, it was, man. And I think things are interesting for him too. Obviously, he's calling for Colby, but you got Bilal who's out there calling for him. And I think welterweight again, just showing itself is so stacked, right? It's such a good division.
Yeah.
You can match.
You got to give Bilal something. You got to give Bilal something. I mean, it's just I feel for the guy, and I know he's your boy. And it's just like the second when you brought up he called out Colby, and then you bring up Bilal, I just couldn't help it. Just like you got to give the guy something. I mean, he's 4 ranked wins in a row. Finishes Sean Brady, an undefeated prospect. You got to give the guy something. If it's not, I mean, Hamzat's going up. Burns just got to win. Colby, you got to sweeten the pot with Colby. And I don't know if Ultimate Fighter is enough for him. Just do Bilal. Let's do Burns and Bilal.
He's got to do something. Colby's got to do something, or not. Like you just match those two up, and see where the rest of you guys kind of fall when you guys start getting matched up. I think Sean's matched up again. I don't know if that's official.
It is.
So that fight, we're waiting to see what you're getting next.
That's a weird fight too. I mean,
that got moved, right? That fight got moved.
March 4th. Yeah.
So things are moving. Fight.
Yeah, Jeff. Yeah, things are moving for sure. I think about Sean and Pereira, and it just is going to remind me of like a pride fight or like some fight in Japan. Sean is so, and I say this with all due respect, he beat me, but it's just such a small guy that's built like he's got like a turtle shell for a back, and then you got Pereira who looks like he's two weight classes too low for the division he fights in. It's going to be a very interesting looking fight. from an aesthetic standpoint.
Well, and just style wise too, right? I mean, Sean is
Yeah.
very clean, compact, and moving like this. Pereira does backflips, flying knees, all this. So, I mean, it's pretty clear cut, in my opinion, how that fight has to play out. Sean's got to close the distance, get in tight, try to get the fight to the ground, use his ground and pound and submissions.
It's
And
those
Pereira
hips for sure.
He's got to just be a maniac and try to keep the fight on the outside.
You never know what you're going to get with that guy.
No, you never know. And Richie, what else are we talking about? Are we going with
Shogun.
we got Johnny Walker, man, does what Johnny Walker does, and he goes out there and very unorthodox style and takes out the always dangerous Paul Craig. Paul Craig, man, he is so game. It's just he goes out and he lives by the sword, he dies by the sword. Is that type of fighter. He goes out, he tries to close the distance. Sometimes he gets caught from some of these more powerful strikers. And if the fight touches the ground for a second, he can definitely sub you, take your arm home. I mean, he beat Ankalaev and Jamal Hill on the same, we talk about two of the top light heavyweights in the world.
Yeah.
And then Jamal Hill goes and knocks out Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker goes and beats Paul Craig. Styles make these fights so interesting. And anytime Johnny Walker is in that damn cage, man, you've got to be careful. You can't let him get a clean shot. I don't care if his leg's in the air. He could have both legs in the air, jump up and be falling on his butt and punch you in the face, and he can knock you out.
And it's just fitting that he's teammates with Michel Pereira. They actually train together, so very fitting duo. This is the thing that perplexed me about the Paul Craig fight. It's like he came out and tried to look like a clean striker. Like, it's just like, usually it's like he is almost instantaneously throwing himself at you, trying to latch onto you, pulling guard, trying to get the takedown. Like, this fight, he's throwing this nice lead head kick, and he's throwing the jab, and I'm like, that's not what you want to do against Johnny Walker. Like, this is the fight to not change your style, because if you try to look, I feel like guys that really try to focus on looking clean against Johnny Walker are the guys that get finished. Like, it's like you have to have something different than just clean, crisp, technical striking to take out a Johnny Walker, because he's such a wild card. And he just did, when Johnny Walker fights at his best, it's when he does weird stuff. Like, you just look at, it was the Justin Leddit fight, right? Where he threw the kick and spun through on the spinning back face. I think it was Justin Leddit. But it's just like these guys that try to look clean are the ones that get knocked out. So, Paul Craig, he should have pulled guard. You should have just grabbed him and just went right to your back.
And it's interesting because, we talked to Paul, and that was one of the things he talked about, was that he's got to get more confident in the striking and blending in his strikes to his takedowns. Now, I agree, but like you said, you can't wait with him. You can be cleaner, but you got to get in. You can't let Johnny settle for any given amount of time. And listen, you get caught. He got the leg. He got the leg, and then he got caught. So it's one of those things where, what are you going to do? Next time you go out there, you try to be a little bit more precise and moving your opponent off the line so that they're not just sitting there. Because even if you just have the leg up, guys can. I mean, that's one of the defenses in Muay Thai. You grab my leg and try to hold my kick, punch the face, then try to pull your leg out. And with a guy like Johnny Walker, when he does it, sometimes he just knocks you down. And
it's almost the same
another
thing
legend.
I was going to say one more thing with Johnny Walker. It's almost the same thing with Johnny Walker. When he tries to fight more clean and conventional, he doesn't do his best. I just feel like you need to be yourself. Be yourself as plan A. Craig, you should try to grapple instantaneously and then go to plan B. It's just very, very interesting things at light heavyweight with everyone's performed. But I think sometimes being yourself is the best game plan.
And I think Paul is going to learn and realize that too, because I think you're right. I think it's go out, do what you do best first. Then when they're worried about, okay, this guy's trying to pull guard, this guy's trying to get in on me, this guy's trying to close the distance. When they worry about that, even if it was unsuccessful, they've got to defend that first, right? That's when you start. But if you go out and you act like, okay, I'm just going to strike, they're not going to worry about your takedown. But if you go out and you just, Imanari roll for a leg or just pull guard or something, then they're going to be worried. But Glover was not the only one to hang it up from Team Brazil on Saturday night. Obviously, an absolute legend of the sport. Pride champion, UFC champion, and just all around good dude who was one of the more savage guys that we've ever seen compete. Mauricio Shogun Hua has decided to call it. This is a guy I had DVD box sets of Pride championships watching this guy fight. The who's who of mixed martial arts royalty. Didn't go his way. And listen, DC made some good points on Saturday that it's almost a rite of passage, right? When you say I'm going to hang it up, look at Frankie Edgar, look at so many guys, they have their retirement fights. If you go out with a big win, it's hard to walk away. But if you go out and you lay it on the line and it doesn't go your way, well, that's one way to tell yourself, listen, it's time to be done. You got to do it in front of your crowd. It wasn't devastating. He got TKO'd. You could tell he got hurt. He got stifled by it, and he got to have a speech. He got to walk away from it. And congratulations, Shogun, on hopefully in the next chapter being as successful as your fight career was.
Yeah, he definitely overstayed his welcome. And I can see DC's point, and it's something that I can't speak to it because I'm not there yet. But it's like, if you're the guy, if you're the fighter, if you're the man in the arena, you're never going to think like, well, I'm just going to go out here and it's my rite of passage if I lose. It's like, hell no. If you're going out to win. I
didn't do it.
Yeah, you're going out to win. I'm not going out to lose, to have my last fight be a loss, especially if I'm making it known this is the last dance. Yeah. I'm doing everything in my power to go out on a win and just sticking to my word. And I know it's hard. We've seen fighters in the past, like Joe Lozon. He got a fight at the TD Garden after he told Dana, hey, this is the last one. It's in Boston. Calling it after this. Then he gets a first round TK over Jonathan Pierce. And he's like, I felt pretty good. I think I'll come back for one more. Yeah, I guess that's where that point comes from, is sometimes the fighter needs to be reminded, this is why you should be done. This is why it is the time for you to move on. And when it comes to Shogun, we talk about the Mexican fighting spirit so much, and look at Shogun. I mean, there is such thing as a Brazilian fighting spirit. You look at guys like Gilbert Teixeira. You look at guys like Shogun Hua. Look at the fight Shogun had with Dan Henderson. I mean, that's about as blood and guts as a fight could possibly get. That first fight with Dan Henderson and all the crazy fights he had in Pride. The one he had against Lil Nog in the middleweight Grand Prix tournament in 2005 was great. But it was time. And I will always cherish and remember Shogun for those amazing performances he had over the ones where he came up short in the more recent years. So I hope that he has a good retirement. Maybe him and Glover can have a little acai bowl on the beach and hang out together. I hope those boys are living up their first days of retirement.
Oh, God, let me tell you, people were eating up those acai bowls. I was eating up steak, mashed potatoes, and rice and stuff like that whenever I got a chance.
And you got a nice little 3-mile jog in when you were a little buzzed up. I heard you stayed committed to your 30 miles.
Before we move on, because we're going to talk to Bonfim brothers next, but before we move on, me and Chef Lorio, obviously the fights went late. We didn't get back to the hotel till 3-something in the morning. We hung out. We may or may not have had a couple cocktails. But it was like 6:45 in the morning, and Ian's like, yo, let's go. Let's run now. I said I wanted to run that day no matter what, thinking, we'll do like 2 p.m. We'll go for a jog, sleep it off. Nope. 7 a.m. had no sleep from the night before. Chug of the water and banged out 3 miles. And
what was the pace? What was the pacing like?
7:30 pace.
That's pretty good.
That was rough for 7 a.m. after a night out. I can tell you that. Ian was looking at me. He's like, dude, my heart feels like it's going to explode. And I was like, you want it to run right now. So I'm making sure we run. For about 3/4 of a mile, though, I went out, I think at like 6:40 pace to really just make him suffer.
To punish him.
And
what do you do? All he does is cook you good food. Come on, be nice.
All he did was cook Jamal Hill good food. He did make me one meal that,
amazing.
Jamal doesn't know I had some, but
he does a good job.
Man, it was like fingerling potatoes that were fried and crisped up in a like rice bowl with like chicken and like this sauce with peppers and stuff. Oh God.
Yeah, he does a good job.
That's not diet food. That's just good food. You know what I mean? That's
food, baby. It's delicious.
Eating healthy is clean and delicious. But speaking of Brazilian deliciousness, the Bonfim brothers, holy
wow,
damn! I mean, one at 55, and Gabriel at 70. Ishmael and Gabriel, These boys can fight. And you know what? They both have the same skill set, but they perform just slightly different. Obviously, we see that aggressive, more kickboxing style and boxing from Ismail. And then Gabriel, just people give them their necks to this guy. This guy will choke you out at the drop of a hat. He's aggressive, gets after you, makes you make a mistake often, which what happened against Munir Lazez, made him make a mistake, made him shoot on him. And that was it. Wrap that neck up, roll right over into that mounted guillotine. And obviously the flying knee from Ismail Bonfim against a very highly touted and tough as nails from what we know, Terrence McKinney, and just was not his night, man. Maybe a little bit underestimated this man and paid for it badly.
Yeah, I think Terrence definitely overlooked Ismail. I mean, he fought a perfect game plan. You could tell this is a kid that did his homework.
Yes,
just countered so well. He knew if you corral Terrence against the fence, you take away a lot of his weapons, especially those pull counters. You take away the pull counter when you stick Terrence against the fence and you force him to go side to side. And that's what set up that beautiful flying knee. And for Gabriel, I mean, when you have that type of, I feel like when you have a good guillotine, especially one like he has, you just find ways to get people into that position to where you can catch their neck. Almost things you don't train. It's just the way you fight and the way you're able to catch that submission from certain scenarios in a fight. I mean, sometimes some things can't be taught. They just come natural. And you want to talk about coming natural. These guys are naturally both tremendous fighters, both very well-rounded skill sets. I watched them both fight in LFA, and you just knew when you saw these guys compete, these guys are the real deal. This is the new wave of Brazilian fighters making their way up. This is the next generation, and it looks scary. I mean, and especially because these guys can wrestle too. There's wrestling. Like we saw the wrestling on Ismail against Terrence. I coached Terrence. I'm not saying Terrence went on to wrestle in college and got way more skills elsewhere than from when he was under me when he was in high school, but he's got tremendous wrestling, and for him to stifle that shows, this kid's legit. Both these brothers are legit. The future is very bright for both of these gentlemen.
Yeah, what a debut for both these guys. They showed out on the Contender Series, and they've been on both fought on LFA. So there's been a lot of talk about these two guys coming in, and you just couldn't have a cleaner debut for both of them. They both got the finishes. They both look fantastic doing it, and I'm very excited to see what the future holds for those two young men. But we got to get into our non-championship round. Well, yeah, we would call it 5 rounds. We're going to call it 3 rounds today. Yeah. And the first round, we're going to start with the non-stoppage of this Murphy Andrade fight. That was a one-sided beatdown, man. Now, I got nothing but respect for Lauren Murphy, but at what point do your coaches or the referee, for that matter, say, I don't think she's coming back. I don't think she's finding that shot. I don't think she's finding that Leon Edwards head kick. Leon at least had his moments. Wasn't getting beat down in that fight. There's certain moments where I think coaches and corners really need to think, is the only opportunity for her to win this fight a lucky shot at this point? And in that fight, it was very clear, no disrespect, but at that point, going into round 3, it was clear that the only way she's going to win is kind of by mistake.
Yeah, that's where you have to be honest with yourself about your fighter. Some fighters have a Hail Mary within their arsenal. No disrespect to Lauren Murphy, but she doesn't have a Hail Mary in her arsenal. There's nothing that she's done historically throughout her career from a skill standpoint that would tell you, like, hey, there is a chance. There is a chance that she can finish this fight. And then you look at the person you're up against. You're up against Jessica Andrade, one of the hardest punchers pound for pound across all the female weight classes. This is a very dangerous fighter. And the other thing, Paul, is there's a different relationship between her and her corner. It's an unconventional one. And it's one that I tread lightly when I talk about this fight with, because that is her husband as her chief corner. So does that muddy the water when it comes to a situation like this? I don't know. All I know is if that was Kelsey Joe Chiesa in there fighting, I would throw the towel. That's something that's a personal thing for me in the way I look at it. But just from an X's and O's standpoint, there was no there was no Hail Mary within Lauren Murphy's arsenal that would make me believe as a coach that she could pull off a win when she's down tremendously in a fight. Not tremendously, when she's just down at a huge deficit in a fight, like with 0% chance of winning.
Yeah, and you gotta, I'm even looking over at Mick Maynard, the matchmaker, and things to him. We're thinking, I'm like, man, when I muted my mic at one point, I was like, just end it now. Let her go recover and let her come back and have another fight. Like let's focus on, she's coming off a huge win. Okay, yeah, she's got to step up in competition. It didn't play out. Take the loss. Go back to the gym. What do I need to work on? Get back in the octagon. Go get another win. But the longer you let a fighter, when it's so lopsided like that, take unnecessary damage, you're just preventing all of that. You're preventing how quick she's going to get back in the cage. You're preventing where her mental state's going to be going back into a fight. You're just messing up the momentum in general. So I think
the loss is going to be the same no matter what. They throw the towel or you go the distance. The loss is going to be the same no matter what. It's not going to affect who you fight next. It's going to affect when you fight next. And more than anything, for Lauren Murphy, she's no spring chicken. I mean, she's up there in age. She's got tread left on her tires, but unfortunately, leaving her in there too long takes away some of that little bit of tread that she has left. So, I'm not a fan of how that fight took place, or I'm not a fan of how it transpired.
Not at all. I agree. But moving on to round 2. Speaking of fighting down in Brazil and unfriendly confines, as we are going to call it so nicely, thanks to Michael Ricci here on round 2. Let's talk some unfriendly confines that we fought in. I'll start. I know you have an interesting one, and it's not what people are going to expect.
Lead the dance.
And I have that one too, but I'm going to go to another one. And this one surprised me too, because I fought in Brazil. I fought in Brasilia, Brazil against Francisco Trinaldo, and that was unfriendly. But it's Brazil. You're going to die. They do their chant.
You're kind of used to it at that point. Yeah.
One that kind of took me by surprise because of how nice everybody was leading up to the fight was when I fought Stevie Ray in Scotland. Okay. I fought in Glasgow, and I was down there, obviously, I think the Sunday before the week, a full week before, going around. Everybody's so excited for the fight. Can't wait to see you guys fight. Obviously, I know they're going to be rooting for Stevie. But I had never heard a crowd lose their ish against me so bad. And then when Stevie made the walk, it comes out to like Braveheart music, or I forget what it was, but it was insane. When Bruce Buffer announced us, from my boos to his screams, I could barely hear him actually announce. And we all know how loud Buff is. So that one kind of took me by surprise. But that was when my dad had passed away recently. I didn't give it who was screaming at me in that fight was winning that fight no matter what. So that was my probably most surprising unfriendly confines.
Yeah, you were a man on fire at that point. So I can see how it didn't shake you, Paul. You're one of the more mentally tough, resilient fighters that we've ever seen. But, this one's kind of a surprise for me as well. I haven't fought really many places internationally. I've definitely fought some hometown favorite guys here in the U.S., but my most hostile experience was actually in Canada, which is crazy because I love Canada. I think that I should have dual citizenship to Canada. I love it so much. But I fought on Battlefield Fight League, which you can watch on UFC Fight Pass. I fought for them a long time ago, like my second or third pro fight. And this card had like 25 fights on it, something ridiculous. So these fans, and I've been to Canada. I've partied in Canada. I know how Canadians like to get down. So it's safe to say across that fight card, a lot of beer was consumed by the time I got to my fight, which was on the main card. And I fought a guy named Darcy James, really nice guy, but I ended up catching him with the Darce choke. So I was getting heckled like really bad by the fans, and I played into it. And actually, you can watch this on YouTube. I jumped up on the cage rail, gave some, the international hand signal for,
I love you guys.
Yeah.
I love you guys.
Flying, flexing. I was super skinny then, flexing, screaming USA, F Canada.
Look at that huge bicep. Look at that.
Ooh, boom, the gun show, baby. Yeah, I was up there flexing.
I wish you could flex right now, Ricci.
Yeah, let's see the Pythons reach. We need to get him in the 3-box. Get him in the 3-box. But I played into it a little bit. But that was my most hostile experience during competition.
Yeah. Real quick before we move on, I had my debut in Canada. It's the only time I've been truly actually heckled was this one guy as I was waiting in the tunnel and they're playing the feature. And John Anik's like, from Philadelphia, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you're done, Felder. You suck. One and done. And I I was doing like my, kind of like Muay Thai. I'm thinking about it. He's like, don't pray now. It's too late to pray now, Felder.
You're about to fight Sago.
You're about to fight Jason Sago, who's a yoga instructor. He's got to murder you. It's like the nicest guy you'll ever meet. Dangerous fighter, but super nice. Yeah. Round 3, in honor of power slap. We're not going to even get into that, right? We're going to do something else. We're not even going to talk about people slapping people. We're going to talk about if you could get slapped by a sandwich.
We got to segue into sandwich.
Sandwich.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor, Charles Oliveira. We got it in. Anyway. Sandwiches.
I was just thinking, how are we going to squeeze them into the show?
Speaking of Conor, I would get slapped by a bologna sandwich, I think. A bologna sandwich.
Oh, man.
Full of bologna.
Seriously, think I would get slapped.
What sandwiches? I mean, just imagine a big old sloppy bologna sandwich getting cracked across your face. Plus, I don't really eat bologna sandwiches, and I don't want to see a sandwich get wasted. Yeah, so I'm taking a bologna sandwich to the face.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't really want to waste good lunch meat. I'd probably go meatball sub and try to like get hit with the sandwich, and like as a meatball's coming by, try to like
see
sneak
if you
out
can
and grab a bite, get a little. Plus, if you did like a slow-mo cam, it'd be good for aesthetics. But if we're gonna do like a Charles Oliveira sandwich, I'd be like, slap me with like an open-faced Brazilian steak sandwich, from like a Brazilian steakhouse or
with
something.
some mashed potatoes on it.
Yo.
The mashed potatoes were so good at that.
Oh,
Golden restaurant. Yeah. Everybody's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get acai." I was like, "Go eat the mashed potatoes." Unbelievable. Anyway,
oh man,
that's it for UFC Roundup. Yeah. Amazing 283. Congratulations, Shogun Hua. Congratulations, Glover Teixeira. Congratulations, Jamal Hill and Brandon Moreno as well for continuing your journey as champions. We're off this weekend, I believe, and then
we do the 4th, and then we have the show the week after that,
and then we'll be back. Yeah, and
are you doing the show on the 4th?
No, I'm off. I'm off for that one.
You. I'll be on the desk late night, baby. Make sure you tune in.
Yeah, that's right, because it was supposed to be down in South Korea.
Yeah, so the main card starts at like 1 a.m. Eastern time.
Good luck, Michael.
Hey, you know what? I'll be drinking Monster Energy drinks. I'll be great.
You know where I'll be? I'll be sleeping and watching it the next morning.
There you go.
That's where I'll be. Anyway, that's UFC Roundup.
Fighting Llamas. Woo!
Go kiss your parents.